The room went silent the moment he raised his trembling hand. Monitors beeped, shoes froze mid-step. A wounded Navy SEAL commander, bloodied, broken, barely conscious, looked straight past the surgeons and saluted me. Not the chief doctor, not the decorated trauma specialist. Me, the new nurse they'd been laughing at all morning. I felt every eye burn into my back as his voice cracked through the ICU. "Permission to report," he whispered. That was the moment everything changed. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I never planned to tell this story publicly. For a long time, I thought silence was safer. But then, something unexpected happened. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had been underestimated, dismissed, laughed at, only to later be proven right. And that's when I knew. This story wasn't just mine anymore. Part 1. The Girl They Didn't See Coming. The first thing you should know about me is this: I didn't look like what they expected. On my first day at St. Matthew's Trauma Center, the badge around my neck still felt foreign. My scrubs were freshly pressed, my shoes untouched by blood or burnout. I stood there, clutching a clipboard, heart racing, trying to look invisible. That was my first mistake. "You're new?" one of the residents asked, dragging the word out like it was a diagnosis. I nodded. "Yes, sir. Assigned to ICU overflow." He smirked and turned to another doctor. Great, another one. They didn't bother lowering their voices. "Let's just hope she doesn't faint. ICU isn't nursing school. Give her a week." They laughed. Not cruelly, worse. Casually, like I wasn't even worth the effort of being mean. I told myself to breathe. I told myself I'd worked too hard to let this get to me. I told myself, they don't know you. But the truth was heavier, because what they didn't know, what no one there knew, was that I had already stood on battlefields without a weapon. I had already learned how to keep men alive when everything around them was trying to kill them. They just saw a small woman with calm eyes and a quiet voice. They didn't see the past I was running from. The hospital erupted into chaos just 2 hours into my shift. Automatic doors slammed open, boots pounded against tile, a gurney flew past me, soaked in blood. "SEAL team inbound," someone shouted. Every doctor snapped into motion. Gunshot wounds? IED blast? Vitals. I caught a glimpse of him as they rushed by, broad shoulders even under layers of blood-soaked fabric, jaw clenched despite the pain. His face was pale, but his eyes were still sharp. A commander. I felt it before I understood it, a strange tightening in my chest, a memory stirring where I'd buried it deep. I followed instinctively, not realizing I'd stopped breathing. "Hey, new girl," a nurse snapped. "You're not assigned." "I can help," I said quietly, surprising even myself. She hesitated, then waved me in. "Fine, don't get in the way." That phrase again, "don't get in the way." Inside the trauma bay, the air felt electric. Doctors barked orders, scissors cut through fabric, blood pooled on the floor. "BP dropping, prep for intubation, where's anesthesia?" The commander groaned softly, his hand twitching as if searching for something. Without thinking, I stepped closer. "Sir," I said quietly, leaning near his ear, "you're not alone. Stay with me." One of the surgeons glanced at me, annoyed. "Who told you to speak?" I swallowed. "I did." He scoffed. "Just hold pressure where I tell you." But the commander's eyes locked on mine, and in that split second, just one heartbeat, I saw recognition flash across his face. Not familiarity, trust. My hands moved before permission caught up. I adjusted his airway slightly, just a few degrees. His breathing steadied. "Hey," a doctor snapped, "don't improvise." But the monitors told a different story. Heart rate stabilized, oxygen levels rose. The room hesitated. "Lucky," someone muttered. "Lucky." I stepped back, letting them reclaim control, but the commander didn't let go of my wrist. His grip was weak, but intentional, and he whispered something only I could hear. "Still standing." My blood ran cold, because those were words from a place I had never spoken about, words from a life I had left behind. I gently freed my hand and backed away as they wheeled him toward surgery. No one noticed my shaking hands. No one asked why my eyes burned, except one doctor watching me too closely. During the lull that followed, the jokes returned. "She almost killed him touching the airway like that. Someone keep her supervised. ICU babysitting duty." I focused on my chart, jaw clenched. They had no idea how wrong they were, and they had no idea what that commander knew, because somewhere between the blood and the beeping machines, a secret had resurfaced, one that connected me to him in a way none of them could imagine. And when he woke up, he was going to say my name. I didn't know it yet, but the next time those doctors laughed at me, it would be the last time they ever did. The hours after surgery crawled by like something wounded but refusing to die. The SEAL commander was transferred to ICU Room 7, glass walls, constant monitoring, restricted access. Only senior staff were supposed to rotate in and out. I wasn't senior staff. I was still the new nurse. Yet somehow my name appeared on the assignment board beneath his room number. When I noticed it, my pulse spiked. I checked again, thinking it was a mistake. It wasn't. Across the room, Dr. Harlan, the same surgeon who had snapped at me earlier, stood with his arms crossed, watching me notice. "Temporary," he said flatly, "until we get clearance from command." I nodded, professional on the outside, while inside every instinct screamed that this was about to matter more than anyone realized. The commander lay motionless when I entered. Machines surrounded him like sentinels, tubes, lines, numbers flickering in quiet vigilance. His face was clean now, but the damage was unmistakable. Deep bruising along the ribs, bandages across his abdomen, a faint scar near his temple that looked older than this injury. Battle scars. I checked vitals, stable for now. As I adjusted the IV drip, my gaze caught on something resting on the bedside table, a folded, blood-stained patch. I knew that patch. My fingers froze mid-air. A unit insignia I hadn't seen in years, one they didn't advertise, one that didn't officially exist. My throat tightened. No, it couldn't be. I told myself coincidence was a powerful thing, that trauma makes the mind reach for patterns that aren't real, but my hands had already started shaking. "Don't read too much into this," I whispered to myself. That was when Dr. Harlan entered with 2 residents trailing behind him. "How's our hero?" he asked, tone detached. "Vitals are steady," I replied, "but his oxygen saturation dips when—" "I'll read the chart," he cut in. One of the residents glanced between us. "She's thorough. I saw the numbers improve earlier." Harlan shot him a look that shut him up instantly. Then he turned back to me. "You did a stint overseas, right?" My spine stiffened. "Yes." "Humanitarian?" I hesitated half a second too long. "Yes," I said again. He studied my face like a man solving a puzzle he didn't enjoy. "Interesting," he murmured, "because our patient here, he's not just any SEAL." I met his eyes. "I know." That earned me a raised eyebrow. "You know?" he repeated. I chose my words carefully. "I know enough to be careful." Harlan exhaled through his nose. "This isn't a place for hero worship, nurse." "I'm not here to worship," I said quietly. I'm here to keep him alive. Something flickered in his expression. Not approval, not quite suspicion either. Calculation. The commander stirred just before midnight. At first it was subtle, a tightening of the fingers, a shallow shift in breath. Then his eyes opened, slow, focused, alert far too quickly for someone who'd been through what he had. I stepped closer. Sir, you're in the ICU. You're safe. His gaze locked onto me instantly. No confusion, no panic. Recognition. You, he rasped. I leaned in. Try not to speak. You've been through surgery. He ignored that completely. They laughed at you, he said. The words hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed. That's not important right now. Yes, it is, he replied, voice weak but sharp, because they laughed at you the same way they laughed at me before they realized. My heart pounded. He shifted slightly, pain flaring across his face, but his eyes never left mine. You adjusted my airway, he continued. Only one type of training teaches that reflex. I said nothing. He smiled faintly. Field trained, not textbook. I glanced at the glass walls instinctively. Anyone could be watching. Please, I whispered, rest. He exhaled slowly. They don't know who you are. No, I said, they don't. But I do, he murmured. My chest felt tight, like something old and dangerous was pushing its way to the surface. The door slid open. Dr. Harlan. The commander's eyes flicked toward him instantly. Something changed in the room. I want her, he said. Harlan blinked. Excuse me? As my primary nurse, her only. That's not standard protocol. Then change the protocol, the commander snapped, then immediately winced from the effort. Silence followed. Dr. Harlan glanced at me, then back at the patient. With all due respect, Commander, medical assignments aren't dictated by rank, the commander finished. You're right, they're dictated by competence. I felt my face heat. Dr. Harlan's jaw tightened. I've trusted her with my life before, he added. The room went still. Before? Harlan turned slowly toward me. Before? He repeated. I held his gaze, calm on the surface, storm underneath. Yes, I said, before. By morning, the hospital no longer felt like a place of healing. It felt like a pressure chamber. Every hallway conversation stopped when I passed. Every glance lingered half a second too long. The laughter was gone now, but so was the indifference. In its place was curiosity sharpened into something dangerous. People don't like mysteries that stand next to them in scrubs. They want answers. Dr. Harlan called an unscheduled briefing at 9 a.m. Attendance mandatory. I took a seat near the back, hands folded, expression neutral. Years of training, real training, had taught me how to disappear in plain sight. On the screen behind him was the commander's chart. No name, no unit, just a black bar labeled redacted. That man, Harlan began, is under direct military oversight. Any breach of protocol, confidentiality, or chain of command will have consequences. His eyes flicked to me, just for a fraction of a second. He continued, we will operate by the book, no improvisation, no heroics. A resident raised his hand. Sir, about the nurse assignment? It's temporary, Harlan said sharply, until we verify certain claims. Claims. The word echoed in my head. When the meeting ended, Harlan stopped me in the corridor. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a request. We moved side by side past nurses' stations and supply rooms. He didn't speak until we reached a quiet corner near radiology. You don't exist, he said abruptly. I turned to face him. Excuse me? He held up a tablet. I ran your credentials. Nursing school, licensure, employment, everything checks out. Too clean. I said nothing. He continued, "You have no social media, no digital footprint before 5 years ago. That's not normal." "I value privacy." He smiled thinly. "So do people with something to hide." I met his gaze evenly. "Are you accusing me of something, doctor?" "I'm trying to understand why a classified military asset just demanded you by name." Asset. That word again. "I didn't ask for that," I replied. "No," Harlan agreed, "but you benefited from it." Before I could respond, his pager buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. "We're not done." "I'm aware," I said. Room 7 was different when I returned. There were 2 men standing outside it now, not hospital security, military. Short hair, stillness, eyes that missed nothing. One of them nodded at me as I approached. "She's cleared," he said to the other. The second man studied my face, then stepped aside. I entered the room slowly. The commander was awake, propped slightly upright. His color was better, his eyes sharper. "You brought friends," I said quietly. He smiled faintly. "Insurance." I adjusted his IV, then checked his vitals. "Word travels fast," I added. He nodded. "Especially when the wrong people laugh at the wrong person." I paused. "You shouldn't antagonize the staff." He watched me closely. "You're still protecting them." I said, "Habit." He exhaled. "You always did have a habit of carrying other people's weight." That did it. I looked at him fully now. "You don't get to say that." He replied, "Neither did they, but they did." Silence settled between us. He said finally, "I thought you were dead." I blinked. "I thought the same about you." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Guess we're both bad at staying buried." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You can't say my name here." "I know." "You can't tell them what I was." "I won't," he promised, "unless you ask me to." I searched his face for deception. There was none. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "The salute." "Because respect isn't situational, and because they needed to see it." "See what?" "That rank isn't always on the uniform." Later that afternoon, a complication hit. His blood pressure dropped suddenly, alarm sounded, the room filled with motion. "Internal bleed?" someone shouted. "Get imaging! Prep transfusion!" I stepped in automatically. "Wait," I said. "Not imaging. He's reacting to the anticoagulant." Harlan turned sharply. "That dosage is standard." "Not for him, not with his metabolic response." "Based on what?" a resident asked. "Based on field data and experience." Harlan hesitated. "Just long enough." The commander groaned, pain etched across his face. "Reduce it now," I said firmly. Harlan stared at the monitor, then at the patient. Then he nodded. "Do it." Within minutes, the vitals stabilized. No applause, no acknowledgement, just quiet recalibration. Afterwards, Harlan pulled me aside again. "That could have gone very wrong," he said. "But it didn't." "You were right," he admitted reluctantly. "Again." I met his eyes. "I don't want your approval." He asked, "What do you want?" "I want to do my job without being treated like a liability." He studied me for a long moment. "You don't belong in this hospital," he said finally. The debrief room wasn't inside the hospital. That should have been my first warning. They escorted me down a service corridor I didn't even know existed, past locked doors and maintenance elevators, until we reached a windowless room with a single metal table and 3 chairs. No insignia on the walls, no flags, no paperwork in sight, just silence. One of the men gestured for me to sit. I didn't. "Am I here as a nurse?" I asked calmly, "or as something else?" The man closest to me studied my face for a long moment before answering. That depends on how this conversation goes. I took the chair. They didn't ask for my name. They already knew it. They didn't ask about my credentials. They'd verified them 10 times over. What they asked about was everything in between. "You disappeared after Kandahar," one of them said, sliding a thin folder across the table. "No exit paperwork, no official discharge." I didn't open it. "You were reported killed in a convoy incident, body unrecovered." "That was convenient," I said. "Yes," he agreed. "It was." The second man leaned forward. "You disobeyed a direct order." I met his eyes. "I followed a moral one." "Your decision saved 12 operatives," he countered, "and cost us a diplomatic incident." "Lives matter more than optics," I said. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, the first man smiled. "Still the same," he said. They let me leave an hour later. No threats, no warnings, just one sentence that stayed with me long after the door closed behind me. "He remembers everything." Back in the ICU, the mood had shifted again. Not hostile, cautious. People were polite now, almost too polite. "Need anything? Can I assist? Let us know." Respect, I'd learned, often comes dressed as fear. Dr. Harlan approached me near the nurses' station. "They pulled your file," he said quietly. "Yes." "They didn't pull mine," he added quietly. "That tells me something." "It shouldn't," he replied. "But it does," he said. We stood there, the unspoken truth hanging between us. He had built his life on rules. I had survived by breaking them. The commander's recovery accelerated faster than predicted. Too fast. By day 3, he was sitting upright. By day 4, walking short distances with assistance. The doctors called it resilience. The military men called it expectation. I called it unfinished business. "You're not cleared for this," I said as I helped him back into bed one evening. He smirked. "I've never been cleared for anything important." "You're pushing." "I'm preparing," he corrected. "For what?" "For what's coming." That night, I didn't sleep. The incident just happened before dawn. A patient coded 2 rooms down. Chaos erupted. Staff rushed past. I was with the commander when the alarm sounded. "Stay here," I told him automatically. He didn't answer. When I turned back, he was already standing. "You can't," I started. "I can, and I will." He stepped into the hallway, and that's when it happened. A young nurse froze mid-step, staring at him like she'd seen a ghost. Then she looked at me, then back at him, and whispered, "That's the man from the briefing." The wrong ears heard that. Within minutes, rumors turned into rallies, rallies into panic. Security arrived, hospital administration followed, and suddenly room 7 was no longer just an ICU room. It was a liability. Dr. Harlan confronted me near the elevators. "They're moving him," he said quietly, "off site." "When?" "Now." I felt my chest tighten. "He's not ready." "He's not staying," Harlan replied. "Command override." I looked past him, down the hall, where the commander stood surrounded by men in civilian clothes. He caught my eye, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty in his expression. "You're coming with us," one of the men said to him. The commander didn't move. He looked at me. "Am I?" he asked quietly. Every instinct screamed at me to stay silent, to let it happen, to disappear again. Instead, I stepped forward. "He's under my care, and he's not stable for transport." The man turned to me slowly. "And you are?" I met his gaze. "The reason he's alive." The hallway went still. Dr. Harlan inhaled sharply. The commander smiled, just slightly. That smile said everything. It said, "You're exposed now." It said, "There's no hiding after this." They delayed the transfer. Barely. Enough time for one more conversation, one more choice. That night, as I adjusted the commander's monitors, he spoke softly. "They're going to offer you something." I didn't respond. "And way back," he continued, "a uniform, a title, a clean story." I finally looked at him. "And if I say no?" "They'll still use you," he said, "just not kindly." I exhaled slowly. "What would you do?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "I'd stand where I always stood, next to the person they underestimated." Because the offer came less than an hour later, and accepting it would mean becoming someone I swore I'd never be again. They didn't knock. They never do when they think they own the room. 3 people entered the ICU conference office just after midnight. 2 men in tailored civilian suits, 1 woman in a military medical uniform with no visible rank. That alone told me everything. Rank hidden is rank absolute. "Thank you for making time," the woman said calmly, as if we were meeting over coffee instead of rewriting my future. I remained standing. "I didn't agree to this meeting," I replied. "No," she said, "but you agreed to stay." Fair point. She placed a thin folder on the table between us. No logos, no letterhead, just wait. "You are currently employed as a civilian nurse, but that status is flexible." I didn't touch the folder. "You have unique experience," one of the men added. "Experience we have a renewed interest in." "I'm not interested," I said. The second man smiled. "You haven't heard the offer." I met his eyes. "I've heard versions of it before." The woman tilted her head slightly. "Then you know we're not asking." Silence pressed in. They laid it out with clinical precision. A special advisory role, embedded medical oversight, no uniform, no press, no public record. You'd have autonomy, authority, protection, and control, I replied. She didn't deny it. "What happens if I refuse?" I asked. The room felt colder. The first man spoke. "Then your presence here becomes complicated." "Meaning?" "Meaning your past becomes less classified and more public." There it was, the threat dressed as inevitability. I glanced through the glass wall into the ICU. The commander lay back in bed, eyes closed, but I knew better. He was listening, always listening. "You're leveraging him," I said quietly. The woman's gaze didn't waver. "We're acknowledging a variable." I clenched my jaw. "He's a person," I said. "So are you," she replied. "That's why we're giving you a choice." A choice with only one safe answer. "Why now?" I asked. "Because he trusts you," she said simply, "and because trust is rare." I laughed once, humorless. "So is mercy." She studied me. "Are you bitter?" "No, I'm realistic." They gave me until morning. No signatures, no paperwork, just time, which is the cruelest weapon of all. When they left, I stood alone in that room for a long moment. Then I walked back into the ICU. The commander opened his eyes before I spoke. "He came," he said. "Yes, they always do." I sat beside him, exhaustion pressing down on me like a physical thing. "They want me back," I said. He nodded. "They never stopped wanting you." I won't go back to that." He was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, "You already are." I looked at him sharply. You're here, in the middle of it, whether you like it or not. I became a nurse to save lives without politics, without orders. And you did. You saved mine. That's different. No, he said gently, it's exactly the same. I turned away, blinking hard. Do you know why they laughed at you? He asked. I shook my head. Because people laugh when they sense power they don't understand. It scares them. I swallowed. They'll stop laughing, he added, one way or another. At sunrise, Dr. Harlan approached me again. You should take it, he said quietly. I looked at him in surprise. You don't even know what they offered. I know enough. You don't belong in a box this small. That's not a compliment, I said. It is where I come from, he replied. I studied his face. For the first time, there was no arrogance there, only respect. The commander was cleared for transfer. I didn't open the folder right away. I carried it through the hospital like a live wire, past the vending machines, past the waiting rooms filled with families who believed hospitals were neutral ground. By the time I reached the stairwell, my hands were shaking. I sat on the cold concrete step between floors and finally opened it. Inside was my life, edited, dates rearranged, operations renamed, failures erased, successes reframed as collaborative outcomes. They weren't offering me a job. They were offering me control of the narrative, and that terrified me more than any battlefield ever had. By the time I returned to the ICU wing, the secure doors were already in place. New access points, new badges, new rules. The military wing looked like a hospital only if you didn't look closely. Cameras tucked into corners, guards pretending to read charts, silence that wasn't restful, only watchful. The commander was settled into his new room when I arrived. You look like you just read your own obituary, he said quietly. Close, I replied. I sat across from him and slid the folder onto the table. They want to rewrite me, I said, turn me into something convenient. He opened it, skimmed a few pages, then closed it again. They already tried that with me, he said. Didn't work. I studied his face. Why did you really salute me? He didn't answer right away. Because, he said finally, I needed them to see who you were before they decided who to make you. Word spread fast after that. Not gossip, reputation. I noticed it in small things. A senior surgeon asking my opinion instead of dismissing it. A resident stepping aside without being told. Security nodding when I passed. Power doesn't announce itself. It settles. Late that afternoon, an emergency came in that no one expected. A civilian contractor, severe trauma, multiple internal injuries, unstable vitals. He was rushed straight into the secure wing by mistake. The second the doors closed, alarms went off. This patient isn't cleared, someone shouted. Doesn't matter, I said. He's dying. Dr. Harlan hesitated at the threshold. Protocol, he began. We'll kill him, I finished. We locked eyes. Then he nodded once. The surgery was brutal. Bleeding we couldn't find, vital swinging wildly, time slipping through our fingers. Halfway through, one of the military supervisors stepped in. This case is compromised, he said. We're pulling the team. No, I said without looking up. He stiffened. That wasn't a suggestion. I finally turned to face him. Then make it an order, I said calmly. On record. The room went silent. He didn't. and the surgery continued. We saved the contractor by the narrowest margin. When it was over, the supervisor pulled me aside. "You overstepped," I replied. "I did my job." He studied me for a long moment. "You're becoming a problem." "No," I said quietly. "I'm becoming visible." That evening I was summoned again. Different room, different faces. Higher up, the woman from before sat at the head of the table. "You forced our hand today," she said. "I forced a heartbeat," I replied. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "Good," she said. "We needed to see that." "See what?" I asked. "How you choose when no one's watching." I laughed once. "You're always watching." "Yes," she said, "and now we're impressed." They changed the offer. More autonomy, clearer boundaries, one non-negotiable condition. "You will train our people," she said. "Medics, surgeons, commanders." "To do what?" I asked. "To stop underestimating the wrong person." I didn't answer. I found the commander later staring out the reinforced window at the city lights. "They moved the goalposts," I told him. "They always do," he replied. "They want me to teach, not follow." He smiled faintly. "That's the most dangerous role of all." I leaned against the wall. "I'm tired." "I know," he said, "but you're not done." That night I dreamed of Kandahar, of shouting into dust and smoke, of choosing lives over orders, of walking away alone. I woke before dawn with one clear thought: I would not disappear again. The next morning, the hospital auditorium filled quietly. Doctors, nurses, military personnel. No announcement, no explanation, just expectation. Dr. Harlan stood at the podium, visibly uncomfortable. "We have a presentation." The salute cut through the room like a blade. Not rushed, not theatrical, precise, intentional, final. Every person in that auditorium froze. Doctors who had mocked me, residents who had whispered, administrators who had pretended not to notice. All of them stood witness as a senior officer, decorations heavy on his chest, posture carved from discipline, held that salute in silence. To me, the new nurse. I didn't return it. I didn't move at all, because I understood something in that moment that chilled me to the bone. This wasn't respect. This was exposure. The officer lowered his hand and turned slowly to face the room. "Continue," he said, not to me, to them. His voice carried authority without effort, the kind earned in places where hesitation costs lives. I swallowed and continued speaking, not because I was calm, but because stopping would have been surrender. I talked about triage under fire, about choosing who lives when everyone is bleeding, about how protocol breaks before people do. No slides, no citations, just truth. I could feel the room bending under it. When I finished, no one clapped. They stood. Every single one of them. Not because they were told to, because something fundamental had shifted. The officer approached me slowly once the room cleared. "You didn't tell them," he said quietly. "That wasn't the point," I replied. He studied me for a long moment. "It is now." Before I could respond, alarms blared from the secure wing. Code blue, room 7, the commander. We ran. The hallway blurred. Doors opened before we reached them. Inside the room, chaos had returned, controlled but razor-edged. "BP crashing, possible clot migration, prep for emergency intervention." I moved automatically, muscle memory taking over. But this time, no one questioned me. They stepped aside. The commander's face was ashen, his breathing shallow. Monitors screamed the truth no one wanted to say out loud. This was bad, very bad. "We need to move him now," a surgeon said. "No," I replied, "he won't survive transport." "Then what's your plan?" Harlan demanded. I looked at the clock, then at the officer standing silently in the corner, then back at the team. "We do it here," I said. "That's not a surgical suite. It's where he is," I cut in, "and we're out of time." Silence. Then the officer spoke. "Proceed." Everything that followed happened fast. Hands moved, orders snapped, equipment repurposed. The line between civilian medicine and battlefield surgery disappeared completely. At one point, Harlan leaned in close. "If this goes wrong, I already has," I said. "We're just deciding how it ends." The clot shifted mid-procedure. The commander convulsed once, hard. Someone swore. I felt the room teeter. "Stay with me," I whispered to him, pressing my hand to his shoulder. "You don't get to quit now." His eyes fluttered open, just for a second. Enough. We stabilized him, but barely. When it was over, sweat soaked through my scrubs. My hands trembled as adrenaline drained away. No one spoke, because we all knew how close we'd come. The officer approached the bed and looked down at the commander. Then he turned to me. "You trained him," he said. I shook my head. He trained himself. I just reminded him who he was. The officer nodded once. Then he did something no one expected. He turned to the room and said clearly, "From this moment forward, she outranks protocol." That sentence detonated silently. Administrators stiffened, surgeons exchanged looks, rules cracked. Harlan stared at me stunned. "You can't just," someone began. "I can," the officer said, "and I have." Later, much later, I stood alone in the stairwell again. Same concrete steps, different weight. The woman from before joined me. "They'll hate you." "I know." "They'll fear you." "I'm aware." She studied my face. "You've become a symbol." I laughed quietly. "I never wanted that." "No one who should ever does," she replied. The commander survived the night. By morning, he was stable. By afternoon, awake. When I entered his room, he smiled weakly. "Guess they stopped laughing," he murmured. I sat beside him. "Guess so." He studied my face. "You stayed." "Yes." "You didn't run." "No." He exhaled slowly. "Then they're the ones who should be nervous now." But the real shock came that evening. An official statement circulated through the hospital. Not public, internal. It named me, not as a nurse, not as staff, but as lead medical authority, special operations liaison. I stared at the words. This was bigger than me, bigger than the hospital, bigger than anything I could walk away from. Harlan found me reading it. "They rewrote everything," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "They finally wrote it down." He nodded once. "I owe you an apology." "I owe your patients better," I said. "That's enough." As night fell, I stood at the ICU window, city lights flickering below. I'd been laughed at, dismissed, erased, and now every decision I made would ripple outward. Power doesn't feel like victory. It feels like responsibility you can't set down. Behind me, footsteps approached. The officer's voice was calm. "They want you on record tomorrow. Full disclosure, public acknowledgement." I closed my eyes. That changes everything. I didn't answer him right away. Not because I didn't know, but because saying it out loud would make it real. Public acknowledgement. That meant names, faces, records. It meant the end of invisibility, and invisibility had kept me alive. That night, I walked the hospital one last time as just a nurse, past the ICU doors where lives balanced on numbers, past the nurses' station where someone once joked I wouldn't last a week, past the trauma bay where laughter had echoed, right before everything changed. I stopped outside the auditorium, empty now. rows of seats where judgment had turned into silence, where a salute had rewritten the room. The commander was awake when I returned to the secure wing. He was sitting up, slower now, weaker, but unmistakably present. "You're thinking too hard," he said. I smiled faintly. "That obvious? You always do when you're about to choose something permanent." I sat beside him. "They want me on record, full disclosure." He nodded. I figured. "That makes me a target." "You always were," he replied gently. "You just didn't let yourself see it." I looked at him. "You could have stayed quiet. You didn't." He met my eyes. "Some debts don't get paid with silence." The morning came faster than I wanted. The hospital conference room was full. Administration, military oversight, medical board representatives. No cameras yet, just the people who decided what stories were allowed to exist. The woman stood at the front. "Today," she said, "we correct an omission." I felt the weight of every eye as she gestured for me to step forward. "This individual," she continued, "has operated under limited acknowledgement due to operational necessity. That necessity has ended." She turned to me. "You may speak." I didn't prepare a speech. I never do. "I came here to be a nurse," I said, "because I wanted to save lives without rank deciding who mattered." A murmur moved through the room. "I was laughed at," I continued, "not because I was incompetent, but because I didn't look like authority." Silence. "I didn't correct them," I said, "because ego doesn't save patients." I paused. "But silence doesn't protect them either." I told them everything they needed to hear. Not classified details, not heroics, just truth. About how experience doesn't always wear medals. About how the most dangerous words in any crisis are, "She's just." "She's just a nurse." "He's just a trainee." "They're just civilians." I met their eyes one by one. People die in that space between just and enough. No one interrupted. When I finished, the woman nodded once. "It's time," she said. The doors opened. Cameras entered. Press. Light flooded the room. For the first time in years, I didn't step back. They didn't call me a hero. They didn't need to. They called me what I was. A medical officer, a field-trained specialist, a nurse who had been underestimated and trusted anyway. Questions came fast. Why hide? Why now? Do you regret it? I answered the only one that mattered. "No," I said. "I regret that it took this long for people to listen." By afternoon, the story was everywhere. Headlines didn't get it quite right. They never do. But the message landed. Competence doesn't need permission. I returned to the ICU one last time before leaving the hospital. The commander was asleep. Peacefully this time. I adjusted his blanket out of habit. Then I noticed something folded neatly on the bedside table. A small patch. The same insignia. This time clean. Intentional. A gift. Dr. Harlan met me near the exit. "I owe you more than an apology," he said. "Then do something with it," I replied. He nodded. "I'm already am. We're changing training protocols." I smiled. "Good." He hesitated. "You could have crushed us." "I wasn't here to win. I was here to fix what was broken." He held out his hand. I shook it. Equal. As I stepped outside, the air felt different. Not lighter. Clearer. My phone buzzed endlessly in my pocket. Requests, offers, opinions. I ignored them. For now. That evening, I posted a single message. No details, no anger, just this. They laughed because they didn't understand. They stopped laughing when they finally listened. If you're underestimated, stay steady. Truth doesn't rush, but it arrives. The comments poured in. Stories like mine. People who had been dismissed, overlooked, mocked, and survived anyway. I thought back to that first day, to the smirks, the whispers, the jokes, and to the moment a wounded SEAL commander raised his hand and saluted a nurse, not to shock them, but to remind them, here's the truth